Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Monday Night Roundup. Here to go through all of the action from the last 2 weeks in the ADBBL. We've had the semi-finals. They've been and gone. We know our finalists. So we know our third place playoff players. We know everything almost, and we're here to go through it. I'm joined, as always, by my Roundup regulars, Tom and Scott. Assuming we've all got mugs in front of us, it might just be me. Tom, how are we doing today? What's in the mug?
Tea, Monday tea.
It's a good
Nothing
standard
too strong
choice.
just yet.
Scott, how are we doing? What's in the mug?
Well, not too disappointingly, Monday night tea as it is at the moment.
I am nursing a sore throat and am drinking what I think is the best thing to get through that. So in my mug is a very strong eggnog that I made before we started. So it's it's cooling, it's soothing, and there's also a lot of rum in it. So it will do me absolutely fine. Well, we will not dive straight in. We've got various updates to go through first. And first of all, I will hand over to Tom to give us a bit of an update on the Blood Rush College Sevens that has been going on. Tom, how is it looking?
Yeah, so by the sounds of things, lots of people were having some great fun with the sevens. Clearly, it's new for a lot of people. A certain individual on this channel is currently leading at the moment, so Scott is well ahead. Just to kind of clarify a few things for a few people who wanted to know a little bit more about it, it's open to all. So even if you haven't played in this season, you're more than welcome to join. Equally, it's down to the coach. So you can play as many games you like. You can take different teams as you like. So I know all three of us, I think, have played multiple different teams just to get a feel of them, just get a look of them. I know that Scott's been playing his rats and his wood elves, so clearly needs to take those training wheels off and starts playing something like Corn or something along those lines for the next couple of games. But equally, we've seen some great games at the end of it. So, like I say, open to all, more the merrier.
I would absolutely encourage anyone who wants to give it a try to give sevens a try, because it's sort of it's unforgiving, but it teaches you quickly, and you can do very well in sevens by just kind of mastering the basics. So it's a really good kind of leveler. So get your games in. I was going to try and get as many games in as possible, and then I've had other things on, so I don't know if I can catch up with the sheer volume of games that Scott has played. But it's really well done, Scott, for holding up the mantle of sevens for us. And with that, in what is becoming one of my favourite new regular features to the roundup, I'm going to hand us over. At some point, I'm going to get a graphic for this because I love it. I'm going to hand us over to Scott's Corner. Scott, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I don't know whether to be insulted, embarrassed, or pleased about that level of feedback. But thank you anyway. Shout out to Coach Acrades, Scott, who's in the chat as well, and to Phil for both rolling some really interesting dice on Friday when we had our games. Anyway, thank you for both, and it is, just as the guy said, a lot of fun. Okay. For me, just we're coming up to the main part of the podcast tonight, so the broadcast tonight. We're going to be looking at the semi-finals. We're going to be previewing the final, but just a reminder why we are here as well. Now, everybody loves a bit of a FOMO in our world, particularly with tabletop gaming. We have the delightful, the not one, but the two-sided Blood Bowl Live mug. There is a limited number of these available. Why do you want one in your life? Just to be like all the cool kids. You can hang out with those guys when you want to. Yeah, you will be the one who will be driving those conversations. It will be all about you as a Blood Bowl coach. This is what you need in your life. And I'm sure anyone else on the chat who's got one will just echo those sentiments already as well. 2 ways to get hold of one of these limited edition mugs. And by the way, there can be more merchandise, but we need to get rid of this lot first in the nicest possible way. How do you want one of these in your lifestyle? One, appear on the Monday Night Roundup. Yeah, if you want to come on here, talk about everything Blood Bowl, or just share your life with the rest of the audience as well, you're more than welcome. All of the previous coaches who have made a guest appearance, speak to them, see how much their lives have improved by having one of these beauties on their desktops as well. You've also got the opportunity as well, making a donation to Suffolk Mind. It is a first come, first serve, and we shout this and we shout it again and make no apologies for it. It's a really important and it's a really great charity. Okay, we've got a fantastic community with through A&D. Kudos to Scott, Chris, and everybody else involved. If we can push, give a bit of payback in whatever way we can, let's do that, guys, as well. This week's mug ownership disclaimers based on feedback from good, loyal consumers. If your handle does fall off, try sticky tape, bit of string, I don't know. Apparently, glue may or may not work. That's individual responsibility. So, mugs to go. Fear of missing out. Get yourself stuck into this, and then we'll see what else we get through the wonderful merchandise catalogue in development at this moment.
I hear rumours that Dave of the Scale Marys and Elliot of the Numpties drank pints of Sunny D from their mugs just before their game. So, whether that's true and whether that does mean that that's why they won, I don't know. Before we get on to those games, a couple more things to quickly go over. First thing I'm going to shout out is tournaments. The Subterranean Showcase happening in October. I don't know if there are spaces still for that tournament. I know that Justin was filling them very, very quickly and possibly has a wait list. If you are interested in that one, if there are spaces, grab them because I know there won't be many. If there aren't spaces, get yourself on the wait list because that's a great one to do. The Ipswich Classic happening at the end of April. That one has 4 spaces left as well, so they're filling up. So if you are interested, speak to myself about that one, speak to Justin about the Subterranean one, get yourself a space while they're still available. Lots of great tournaments happening around, and get yourself involved. Before we go to the first semi-final then, I feel like we can't really talk about Blood Bowl tonight without talking about the tiny garden ornament elephants in the room, and just mention gnomes, the team that nobody asked for and now everybody wants. Kind of a slightly incredible drop from Games Workshop, if you ask me. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about it. My initial reaction was I saw them and I went, "What joke is this?" Then I read up about them and went, "Yeah, I'm gonna need to get myself that team immediately." Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I had to double check to make sure it wasn't April.
Yeah.
To start off with. They have kind of left us guessing as to what the stats are on them, and they do at the moment look pretty punchy with a few of their built-in skills like guard for a stunty team, as well as jump up and wrestle, plus their new star player who seems to have a funky special ability, catch of the day.
Yeah, the jump up wrestle on lineman is on stunty lineman, that's that's madness. And like, yeah, the only team in the game with players that come through, like the players that come with guard. No other team has players that come with guard. Shout out from Scott from Aardvarks and Dragons from the shop. Get your pre-order requests in as soon as possible. He's already up to 11 people having pre-ordered this gnome team. Get your pre-orders in. I haven't pre-ordered them and I do need to, so make sure you get them in so that you can get those gnomes as quickly as possible. I'm excited to see what gnome dice look like. I'm kind of hoping for maybe like blue, like I'm thinking of what a gnome looks like, and I'm hoping for like blues and reds in the dice, something quite kind of nice and crisp, but I don't know. Scott, what do you think?
I think just shout out as well, first of all, to Games Workshop, because when you look at some of their other bigger games, whether it's 40k or AOS, or even if you looked at Legion, and when they also just recently relaunched Old World, they sometimes get it really wrong and really badly wrong in terms of stock availability, in terms of maybe deliveries not turning up regularly, and then delivery turning up with too much and not enough on them as well. Blood Bowl is a game they don't really do a lot with, but when they do, they seem to do it exceptionally well. So to bring something like this out of nowhere, everybody was, of course, speculating about what was going to happen with Chaos Dwarfs, possibly in plastic, Tomb Kings making a return as well. Nobody was thinking about gnomes. And then to bring them in, as you said, everybody's got what's now being termed as rump up, so wrestle and jump up as well. If you've got someone who is stunty with jump up, if you take sidestep as well, it's just going to be a lot painful as well. So, yeah, I think kudos to the Blood Bowl marketing guys, who may be a small team of Games Workshop. They've really delivered on this. The amount of hype going around the internet about it is fantastic, and the quality of the sculpts when they do arrive, Games Workshop are fantastic. I mean, if you've looked at Rodney Roachbait, he's got his bucket of worms. He's got his opened can, which is spilling on the base as well, and it's very, very good. So yeah, raise a glass, kudos to Games Workshop for once. Am I looking forward to them? Yeah, more playing them than playing against them. I think they're either going to be tough. And of course, you've got a badger, you've got fox, you've got geese. Chris, you just need acorn, and then you've got the full woodland experience.
I know. I'm really torn between just doing a Smurf team or doing some kind of bizarre animals of Farthing Wood, or water, or maybe we'll watership down. I don't know. Give them all bunny ears and make it really bleak. Not sure.
I was hearing people were talking about putting acorn for 20k just for that team as a special thing, so they can have double the amount of power.
I feel like that'd be a great kind of bonus. Like, you could take acorn on the cheap because because of everything. Yeah, I'm excited to see them and give them a go. I think halflings I can never quite get on board with getting the team for. And the idea that this team are like the big rival to halflings, I'm like, yeah, I get it, and I actually think I prefer these. So yeah, as long as I can throw them, I'll be happy. I want to be able to throw them as far as possible.
Do you think their strength is going to be 1 or 2 though?
My gut was 1.
The size of a snotling, or are they going to be the size of a half?
Yeah, because my gut was strength 1, but I don't know. I wonder whether the like surely if they're the rivals to halflings, maybe not. But
I thought goblins were the rivals to halflings.
Goblins just need work at this point. Yeah. They need help. But I mean, yeah, excited to see them. I've got no doubt that some gnomes are going to appear in, if not next season, the one after that. Absolutely. Speaking of seasons, let's get into it. Let's get straight in. And I say straight in, we've been dawdling for 15 minutes, but let's get into it, and let's have a look at the fixtures that we had. We're going to start with the first semi-final that we had played, which was the Castlevania Bloodthirsters versus the Numpties. Another Numpties game going to extra time here, and I watched as much of this one as I could, and I honestly really felt for Tom. Because it was a game that you watch and you look at and you go, neither of these coaches deserve to lose this game. Someone has to. Neither of them deserve to. Tom did so well to throw everything at those dwarves. He knew exactly what he was facing. He knew the uphill battle he had, and he did phenomenally to put up such a fight. And Scott, it just. I don't think I don't think Elliot rolled many dice lower than a 3 all game, and Tom's dice failed him at kind of the just not even many key points, but just the points where he just needed that bit of luck, and I think that was all that was in it.
I thought for a moment, Chris, you were going to point at me and said it's your fault because you called out Tom as the potential winner.
Well, you did, to be fair.
I did, and if I didn't, the retrospective disclaimer was obviously the call outs of an inane witcher in full are not to be trusted and cannot be held in a court of law. I don't think. Exactly as you said, though, this was a real big clash. Both coaches especially Elliot, been playing some fantastic dice, some fantastic games. Tom has seemed to master the team that has really caused a lot of perplexity and frustration with a lot of coaches. Tom, I'm gonna let on my side there. And he did really well. And exactly as you said, he went 1-0 up, the possibility of going 2-0 up, and the dice just didn't want to know. And then the one thing we know as well with Elliot, when he gets the dice, yes, he rolls them well. But for me, this was a lot about his game management. We talked last week to Tom about the importance of when you go to the extra time, and overtime. Is it all about who goes first, who gets to receive the ball first or not? And he said then at the time against Rich, it was a very close game. It felt this was just the same thing with Elliot, except the luck of the dice, as you said, had a big, big impact. So yeah, really impressive game from both coaches. I think Elliot shaded it with his game management and a bit of better dice. Tom.
Yeah. I've watched a bit of it myself, and yes, it looked it looked like it was going all Tom's way with the straight away on turn 3 with a touchdown, and then like you say, it was a bit of a long hard slog of backwards and forwards with dice being rolled, casualties and injuries coming in left, right, and centre. Unfortunately, a bit one-sided on the casualty side with Tom. So it was one of those ones where, as playing vampires, you do have some nice skills on some of those vampires. Plus, playing against dwarfs, you've got a bit more speed than them with your throwers and your runners. I don't know how much hypno gaze was being used, but that for me is now a go-to with the vampires, especially against something like dwarfs. So yeah, a hard won fight, but it seems that the dwarfs have got through.
It was so difficult to watch, and you could tell that there were points where the frustration was clearly getting to Tom. And I've had it so many times this season, last season, many games where it really gets to you. And he actually, to his credit, I think sometimes you can get really frustrated and you start to just being like, screw it, I'm going to try this, and you start trying these kind of incredible sort of plays and things to try anything. And when you look at the fact that he scored on turn 3, he then had, because they went to extra time, 21 turns of dwarves receiving and being kind of coming for you. That's such a slog, and like, it's so impressive. Elliot can score quick with these dwarves. He didn't concede in the first half, so he was 1-0 up, and then he had many kind of moments where he was nearly there. And vampires have good agility. A lot of the time it was just don't roll a 1, and this is the tide turns, and it was at those points where the ones came, and it was so, Tom didn't put a foot wrong, but at the same time, Elliot, as we've seen for 2 seasons now, doesn't put a foot wrong and has the dice to back it up, and was on phenomenal form yet again. Like we saw it all of last season through to the final. We've seen it all of this season, and it's not to say that he's not stoppable. He lost some games last season. Elliot is beatable. He's being taken to these long games, but he knows what he's doing with a very, very strong team.
I think on that side, Chris, yeah, if there's a game of attrition, then the Dwarves are the ideal team, and Elliot is really coaching them, through these long, drawn-out matches. You mentioned as well with Tom, and in terms of the dice, when they were ones, they were going to ones. And to put it in context, Tom was rolling, he had 4 re-rolls as well. So you think most teams would, love 4 re-rolls. So for 4 re-rolls and to get this far, a great match, really, really tense match. Again, right to the last drive to score. So it's very, very good indeed. I'm interested in maybe, when we start thinking, towards season 7, what will Tom's performance do for vampires? For A, as a coach, is he going to stick with vampires? Don't know if he's in chat. But will it encourage maybe some of the other vampire coaches who didn't have such a good season to revisit them, maybe? Or will it invite brand new, fresh vampire coaches into the mix? What's your thoughts, Tom? Has it inspired you as a vampire coach to think this is how I could play them? Or have you just want to? Is your therapy still ongoing and you just want to work with them?
But for me, I just want to find a team that doesn't require any dice rolls at all. Minimum dice rolls. That's the thing where I've said it many times before, and I'm pleased that Tom had some fun and got into them because they just didn't start for me. I just couldn't work them out in a way that would be effective on a regular basis. Every game was a brand new kind of random game for me on that side of things. But the others that used them very well. Tom being a perfect example of that. But just quickly looking at the numpties, that team is an all-star team now. There's literally only one player that doesn't have a skill. He had had a troll slayer and a dwarf runner that got killed and got knocked out, and already his new dwarf runner's got kick as a random skill. So that just shows you how good his rolling is. His dice rolls are that even when he doesn't need to play it on the field, his dice rolls are good when he tries to get new skills on these teams. It'll be an interesting matchup as I've just look into the next one against the Scale Marys.
Yes, we'll look at the final matchup between these two. It's going to be very, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a new challenge that maybe Elliot hasn't faced yet with kind of strength and speed. We'll have a look at that. Tom, we'll look at Tom's chances in the third place playoff as well, and see how he gets on there. We'll go to the next game, which was the Scale Marys versus the Buffalo Biggins. And I feel like now that Harrison is officially eliminated, I can openly cheer for him, even though it is too late. This game appeared very, very tight. As far as sort of a touchdown goes, it came in the first half, and then it seemed to be a bit of a slog. I'll be honest, I wasn't able to watch this one. I had some other things I had to do, but I think it was always going to be tight here. Both of these coaches with teams that suit their play style quite well. Scale Marys maybe with a bit more experience of having played this team, but Harrison on a very good run. Scott, did you think it would swing the Scale Marys' way because of some of the skills they've got there, or how did you kind of see this playing out?
I called the Scale Marys when we were coerced into making our predictions last week. I watched the match and it was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be, certainly. In terms of when it started, Scale Mary received, and on their second movement, on their second turn, you could tell what was going to happen. Dave went heavy right, going down the flank as well. Saurus is protecting the skink with the ball, and it looked very sort of agile-esque, that classical set up the beachhead, and then you're on for a turn 2, turn 3, worst case turn 4 touchdown as well. Elliot did a great job in moving his orcs and the defense across as well.
Harrison.
And I at one point thought, has he actually stemmed the tide here? But Dave managed to get a skink through, and then it really went across, back and forth in terms of the game. If you look at tour play, it doesn't really, say a lot. Yes, there are a few casualties, few injuries, fouls, little bits and pieces, but nothing consistent if you look at it. And I think it just shows the nature of the back and forth. And when you look then towards the end, at turn 14, Elliot was pushing down his right-hand side. I think he was about 6 to 8 squares away from the end zone. You think this is it. And then Dave got his Saurus blockers coming across as well. They crowd surfed the ball carrier. And then when the crowd kicked the ball back onto the pitch, it bounced 8 squares back towards Elliott's end zone, and you could almost hear the heartbreak across the broadcast. It was just like game over. And of course, despite all more things happen as they do with Bloodbowl, so that was turned 14 into 15. Dave went down with a skink, fumbled the ball, and then Elliot, you thought, is he going to have a chance to get an orc down there, pick up the ball, maybe go for some sort of super pass, and at least pull it off? Unfortunately, wasn't able to pick up the ball, and that it just felt, I wouldn't say it felt a bit of an anticlimax, but up until that had been such a great game to be decided by a crowd surf that if it had gone 8 squares the other way, who knows, he could have gone in for a pickup in the end zone. It was that much of a close match, and I thought it was a really great effort again by Elliott. And when we come on to talk about the final, some interesting precursors that we need to look at from our perspective.
We all know that you mean Harrison when you say Elliot in this game. So
Did I? Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I can't read my writing.
It's all right. It's
sorry,
okay.
Sorry, Harrison.
Tom.
Yeah, so like you say, it doesn't look much on tour play, but looking down the stats, the Scale Marys, on average, have won 2 touchdowns ahead of their competition throughout this season. So to only win by 1 touchdown just shows how well Harrison thinks out the play on the board. Like I say, I've played him a couple of times throughout the season, and I'm just amazed at the way that he can see a board and work it well, especially against the Lizards, which I've never played Lizards, but I've always been told that they're one of those really good teams that have both solid defense, but they've got those skinks for the speed and just can nip through with the defense of the of the blockers and stuff. And equally, looking at the skill levels on both sides, those Scale Marys have got a lot of nice skills. They've got skinks with sprint, sure feet, diving tackle, sidestep, diving tackle again, plus like the blockers have all got things like juggernaut, guard, block. So Dave's really built a solid team out there. And looking at the Orcs again, Harrison's been very thoughtful and picking his team, his skills, rather than randomly rolling them. So again, there's a bit of something to think about for next season. Do you just, as soon as you get the points, roll for those random skills, or do you wait? And even though on the paper the Orcs look completely outnumbered on skill base, he's got those great skills which clearly caused headaches for the Scale Marys to only get a 1-0 touchdown and win.
Yeah, and Dave's team has evolved quite a lot since the beginning of the season. A lot of those kind of strong Saurus blockers in there have kind of remained. Pretty much halfway through the season, Dave lost in a few back-to-back games, lost most of his skinks, had to completely rebuild, and has got the SPP he's needed on them to get to be honest, better skills. He had an awful lot of sneaky get, he had a lot of dirty player on those skinks. They were a very different kind of skink setup, and he's had to replace pretty much all of them, and instead he's got sidestep, sure feet, jump up, sprint, much better skills that he has used really, really well to kind of pull himself forward. So his team, is really interesting to see how his team has evolved and how his team has changed. Harrison, it's the second season in a row that the wooden spoon of the previous season has made it all the way to the semi-finals, and that is incredible. I think that shows more how close the league really is when you get down to it, rather than anything else, because you can have a bad season, and anyone who's had a bad season and is thinking, I always have bad seasons, look at some of these coaches who get through to the playoffs for the first time, or get the wooden spoon and come back and charge their way through to semi-finals playing fantastic Blood Bowl, it really shows kind of the quality that we've got. That actually, I think every season anybody could get to playoffs and anybody could get this far, and everyone is, there are names that we shout out as the people who we expect to go through every year, and like we often, I mean, we do it, we did a season preview and we wrote off 12 people before we'd even started, and yeah, it's really good to see. So I'm really happy that Harrison's got this far. I was really hoping he'd make that next step to the final. I thought that would have been great. So commiserations to Harrison. But Dave has built something really strong in this Lizard team.
And equally, just to add to that, those three names that we were talking about didn't even make it to the semi-finals. The last one was knocked out in the quarters. So we often talk about the Riotous Rams, Iceborne Raiders, and Tetanus Hotspears, where all of us were saying, "Yep, they're through," kind of scenario, because they've got pedigree in the game, they've got they know how to play it, but the way the team the scoring went and the way that the board was done and the dice were rolled, they were all knocked out. And like you say, we had brand new people all in the semi-finals and a brand new two teams in the final. Excellent.
It's great. I love to see it, and well done to Dave for getting through. Part of me wants Dave to win it because then I can say that I was thrashed by the champion.
Sorry, Dave.
I have immediately jinxed him, so apologies to him. Let's look at those two games then that we've got coming up, and first of all we will look at the third place game first. Tom versus Harrison. Tom had some very nice things to say about Harrison when he was on last week. He said that when we asked him whether it was a surprise to see Harrison get this far because of previous seasons, Tom said that it wasn't a surprise, even a little bit. Harrison is incredibly good, but just has some of the worst luck of anybody that he's ever met. Words of praise from Tom. These are two people who have played each other regularly. They've played each other an awful lot. They will know each other. They will know how they think the other person's going to play. There's going to be no surprises between them, I don't think. I think it's a tricky one to call which way this will go. I think on paper, I think my head says Tom and my heart says Harrison. Tom, what do you think?
Well, looking at the teams and looking at their kind of mounts, there isn't much between them. So yeah, I think it's that classic thing. It's down to the dice, really. I think it's going to be an interesting one because, as I say, there's too much ducking and diving and moving around with the vampires. I think everyone keeps saying about vampires that if you just take out the thralls, then they'll self-implode. But actually, looking through all of the games that played with vampires, no one's actually ever achieved that. No one, and I've played a few people, and no one had actually taken that view on it. So I often think that the thralls are a little bit like snotlings. You try and target them, and they'll just keep falling over, but not actually break armor. So you can waste a lot of dice rolls. It's going to be an interesting game to watch. That's for sure.
Scott, what do you think about this one?
I agree with one in terms of on paper. I'd go for Tom purely because what he's achieved with these, which is relatively complex team, especially in terms of the number of dice rolls, which always adds that uncertainty. And we know this game is all about managing probability. I think he's looking very good. Yes, he's been using the thralls exactly as what they're intended, throwaway cannon fodder. I've just looked as well, and Harrison, not Elliot, but Harrison, he's got sort of 200k of inducements to take as well. So I'd be really interested to see what Harrison is going to do with that. They drew on Friday night. I think it was 2-2 in their friendly that Tom posted in Discord. Sounds like it was a very good and exciting match as well. and if we can get that sort of standard for the third, fourth place playoff, I think it's all there, for either of them to win this. Tom's slightly ahead on paper, but Harrison's proved, he can take it to anybody on his day, playing some very good Blood Bowl, as we said.
Third place game is always an interesting one. I've played in one third place game myself, and I was playing with a team that I knew I was not going to redraft at any point. So it was kind of like you could throw everything at it. You could be a bit carefree to try and get the result. Both of these teams were not redrafted teams, so both of these teams are teams we could see next season. And we saw last season that Simon, in his third place playoff, there was a point in the game where he knew he wasn't going to win, so he protected the key players because he wanted to bring them back for next season. How do you approach this? Do you want that kind of that title of having come third? Do you want to win that third place? Or if you're one of these coaches and you're thinking this team's coming back, are you going to be a little bit cautious with your play?
But go for it, Tom.
Sorry, I think I'd be the former. I'd just go in and play the game. I'm often the person who just picks a new team for the next season anyway. But like you say, those both the vampires and the orcs have got a lot of nice skills that they've worked hard for. So, like as you quite rightly put it, just one false move and you've lost a 150k thrower or a 150k blitzer. So, interesting kind of thoughts there.
I think for me, it's that question you asked, Chris. Are either of the coaches going to redraft these teams next season? Because if they're not, then what they got to lose, you might as well go all out for it. If they are they going to, protect their important players, or like a lot of, professional teams now do, not that I'm comparing ourselves to professional teams, are they going to say play their players for as long as possible, or for the first 10, 12 turns, and then bring them off the pitch if things aren't going their way? So both options. So personally, like Tom, and I know like yourself, I as a scaling coach, I'd just be throwing the dice. Yeah, if it lives, it lives. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's what Nuffle wants from us all, and that's what we're going to do.
Credis makes a great point in the chat that it's a good result to claim, but also it's a good kind of chance to gain some SPP for the redraft. So there's that balance as well. If I did not redraft my team, when my Lizards made it to the third place playoff, we lost 2-1 to the Tipsy Tankards, and our Croc score was killed dead, and my heavily skilled up best skink was killed dead as well in that game. So if I was going to redraft, I would have been gutted that player had gone. But we'll see. Good luck to both of them. We will hopefully bring you this game, depending on when it comes. Obviously, we will be prioritising the grand final, which is going to be played this Saturday in the shop, is when the grand final will be. A bit of testing needs to happen, but I'm very much hoping that myself and anyone else who will join me will be there in the shop, giving some element of commentary. Exactly
Do you
how.
have a time?
We don't have a time yet. All things I need to confirm. But I'm very much I'm very much expecting there to be a little corner where I am sat for the day, and hopefully joined, and hopefully any coaches who want to come along as well. It would be great to get some guest coaches in on some commentary at the same time. Lots of things to figure out, but this Saturday is when the final is going to be, and it's going to be a really interesting final because I can't remember the predictions we made at the very beginning of the season. Before we do our kind of end of season review, maybe I'll go back and I'll check what they were going to be. But I think the numpties making it this far was somewhere on most of our lists. I don't think any of us put the Scale Marys to make it this far, but they absolutely have earned their place here. how to kind of call this one, I don't know, because I think, Scott, I'll come to you first. My It feels like the kind of the momentum. Uh, is momentum the right word? It feels like the Numpties are the team to beat, and that the Scale Marys are maybe the team with the challenge ahead of them. That's kind of how it feels to me.
Um, I can't disagree with that, Chris. I was actually going to ask you because you are the only coach. You know, let's not mention it too many times, given your level of modesty. But
I've
as the
mentioned
only
Phil's
coach,
6-1 loss to the Numpties enough times, 6-0 loss for enough times
I
for you
wasn't
to
going to
bring up
mention that,
4-0.
Phil mentioned that, Phil. As the only coach you are to beat the Scale Marys this season, because Dave has only lost to you and he's drawn one as well. Elliot's only drawn one so far this season. What do you see as the potential weaknesses for the Scale Marys in terms of, yes, they've got the flexibility. We've seen how Elliot can really, step up against flexible teams such as the Vampires and the previous teams as well. So if you were looking at it from a Lizard Men perspective, you're looking at Dave's team, what are your big concerns? Is it going to be the fragility of your skinks? Is it going to be the fact that you're giving away 170k in terms of inducements to team's value? What would be keeping you up and giving you sleepless nights? Just Blood Bowl related, Chris.
I just immediately assumed you were going to say, as someone who lost to the Scale Marys, how do I recover? No, it's tricky. I think with all Lizard teams, you take out the skinks and the game is done. Relatively, if you can take them out before they do any damage, then it's a lot easier for you. Um, the Numpties have a lot of time. I think if I were Dave, my concern would be that the Numpties have tackle in that team, which messes up the dodge that all those skinks have. So your skinks are a lot more vulnerable than against other teams. So, I mean, if I were Dave, I would probably be looking at playing a slow game. If I were Elliot, I would be looking at that team and I would be seeing a team that has lots of Mighty Blow, lots of guard, strength 4s across the board, a front line that is difficult to break through, and I think I think actually just the way that Elliot has played, Elliot generally plays quite a patient game. He doesn't rush things unless the opportunity is there. I don't think Dave will give him the opportunity to rush, and I think that probably just plays into Elliot's plan. I think Elliot will just sit back and go, okay, all right, we won't rush this. Let's grind our way forward and let's pull the trigger when we want to. And he's got that runner in his team. With the improved movement, with that movement 7 runner, with sidestep, strength 3, it's only 1 point of movement less than a skink anyway. He's got that bit of pace that he can kind of activate when he feels it's right to do so. So, yeah, I think if you're Elliot, play the way you've played all season. And I think if you're Dave, maybe this is the game to take it slow. Maybe this isn't the game to rush for anything quick. Don't leave anyone unprotected, because an unprotected skink against this dwarf team is going to get absolutely battered, and the more with each one that goes off the pitch, the more difficult your task is. Tom, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, so looking at the teams, it's a very difficult one to kind of guess. As you quite rightly, both of you have mentioned, these two teams are at the peak of their kind of skill levels, really, for what they need. You've got some interesting players on both sides. For example, you say, play the slow game for the Scale Marys, but you've got the likes of 2 Troll Slayers, one with Juggernaut in on it as well. Who can really just have a go at a cage, or just literally take out the side of a cage or something like that. My thoughts were, because the Lizards have got that speed, do you try and get you know, 2 touchdowns ahead pretty quick, not get them in. So then, because you know what the speeds are with the dwarfs, I think again there's so many factors that could come into here. You know, we haven't even factored in the fact of weather or something like that that could crop up just
Yeah.
to add a little bit of spice to the actual event. But it definitely will be one of those ones where turns will be assessed, looked through at a very kind of long, kind of thoughtful pace, I think, because there's so much different skills here that both teams have not only got to look at their skills, but they've also got to be just double checking with the competition. What skill has that player got? What skills that player got? And then kind of reassess it in their head. It's going to be definitely one to watch.
Question for both of you then, guys. We've talked about skills. We talked about the fact that both teams have a really good depth of skill as well. Just in terms of number of players, 12 for the Scale Marys, only, the regulation 11 for the numpties. You've got 170k plus your inducements. So you've got, how much has he got? So Elliot's got a ridiculous amount in the treasury, 340k. He's got 170k of inducements if he wants to play with that. 170k is a death roller. Would you take a death roller or something else, maybe a bit different, at this late stage? Would you go into that final thinking, do I need a little bit of extra security? Do I want to go out and try and win it slightly differently, or do you want to not risk it? What would you both do in that situation?
Ooh, good question.
Wonderful.
Like you say, if you're looking to take these teams through to the next season, why not buy a death roller and just throw it onto the pitch, just to cause a bit of mayhem at the beginning, just disrupt the Scale Marys a little bit, because we're worried about the skinks, but take out a couple of blockers or even that Croxagore, then you got problems on the Lizardman side as well.
And Elliot just posted in chat as well, death roller might appear.
I think it's not last season. John John ditched a load of players before the final to bring the kind of team values level, because there was a difference and he was kind of worried about the inducements. Elliot's now in a completely different position now, where he's looking at the Scale Marys and he's got the inducement money. Obviously, yeah, the difference in player numbers is so minimal. If Elliot takes a star, he levels it. If Elliot buys a player, he levels it. I'm doing the numbers in my head, and I'm thinking, if you're Elliot and you buy a death roller, and that puts your team value up. If you're Scale Marys, is there a player that you sack that gives you a star that is better than one of your players that is on the pitch? I don't know. It could be interesting. I feel like the difference between the numbers isn't big enough that anyone's gonna immediately make a decision. I feel like we could not know which two teams go into this game up until they're stood either side of the table staring at each other and deciding what's going to happen. You know, and if you're Dave, to be fair, if you're Dave, looking at the treasuries, Elliot could buy a death roller just before kickoff, and Dave could buy a skink just to have another one in the bank to still be up on numbers just before kickoff, and not be giving away many inducements at all with that extra player. So it's so tight. Like there's actually so little in it between the two of them. I don't know. I don't know if Elliot is planning. Elliot's in the chat. Be interesting to know if we're. I get the impression that with both of these teams, their redraft could depend on the result of this game. That's kind of what my gut is saying, that we might see whichever team wins again, but we might not see the other one.
I think that's the question for Elliot, is if he's in chat and he can respond. He's mentioned the death roller, but are we going to see numpties for a third season? As champions, they'll go Elliot, brother Phil. So is Elliot gonna, if they're champions, is he gonna bring them back? If they aren't champions, would he bring them back for a third season?
Well, many questions to be answered with this final. So, final is going to take place on Saturday. As the week goes on, keep an eye out. We'll be posting lots of hype and getting you all rallied up as possible. We will be in store for that particular final. We will be bringing you as much as we can of both the final and the third place playoff. If they're played on the same day at the same time, we'll bring you the final, but we'll keep you updated on the third place game as it goes. That's it. That's us for our roundup. It was just a couple of games to go through in the previews. Thank you very much to Tom and Scott for joining me as always. Thank you very much to everyone who has tuned in for putting up with my horsey voice. I'm going to give that a rest for the rest of the evening. I've finished with my eggnog. I might make myself a White Russian to soothe it for the remainder of the evening. We'll see. Huge thank you to everyone. We will see you on Saturday for the grand final. You don't want to miss it. Join us then.